carbon could cost us the planet.
Mr. Vice President, if we don't act now, it's going to be too late.
There's a blurring between fiction and reality.
Cancel Christmas.
Because they have a political agenda.
So no new pipeline?
No, actually this time no.
Use windmills instead, so Americans
control and own their own energy.
And recycle.
Wow, I'm so empowered.
And shut down SeaWorld.
Are you whales being cruelly imprisoned here? Should you be set free?
People demand they be free, that mines and pipelines be stopped. And they're succeeding.
This is green tyranny.
Green tyranny. That's our show.
You can love nature, but still hate the tyranny the green movement now imposes.
The proposed Pebble Mine is a disaster waiting to happen.
That ad comes from one of America's richest environmental groups, the NRDC, the National Resources Defense Council.
Imagine this natural paradise destroyed by a 2,000-foot gaping hole in the ground.
The man who wants to dig the gaping hole is Tom Collier. He's a Democrat who once managed environmental policy for
Al Gore, Bill Clinton. You consider yourself an environmentalist?
I do.
After his environmental policy work, Tom saw opportunity in Alaska.
This is the single largest deposit of gold and silver that is not being developed in the entire world.
Not being developed because the EPA stopped it.
They're proposing killing our project before an environmental impact statement has been done.
Tom's firm hired hundreds of people to conduct a scientific study of this land so they could ask for permission to begin digging. Usually the EPA waits for that and then does its own study before it determines the fate of a project. But in this case, the EPA rejected the mine before Pebble even got its application in.
You used to have 400 people working on this.
Yes, we did.
Now?
3.
It's like a ghost town here.
Myrtle Anilon ran Graham's Bed and Breakfast. But when Pebble shut down, she shut down too. So did most of the village.
There's nothing. There's no one here to lease or rent buildings.
We're all stuck here, the people that live here without jobs, without economy, with bills, and wondering how we're going to survive.
When Pebble ramped up, Lisa Reimer's company employed 215 people. Only 6 remain.
I'm sorry, you know, when you see your people struggling and you have to let them go because there's no jobs here, and they're angry at you because they think it's your fault, it's really difficult.
And whose fault was it? The environmental groups, says Lisa.
The environmental groups ran these ads. They made people believe on TV that everything was going to die.
Save Bristol Bay from the threat of the Pebble Mine.
You're going to kill all the salmon.
The things that NRDC is talking about are from an age far in the past. Now you can build a safe mine. There are 2 fairly significant mines that sit right on the edge of the Fraser River. It's the 2nd largest sockeye salmon fishery in the world. No problem with the salmon.
But the NRDC got Robert Redford to say,
The EPA has confirmed that the Pebble Mine, a massive gold and copper mine, would devastate Bristol Bay.
If you hear something over and over and over on TV and that's the information you get, then you start believing those lies. And then when we went to visit a mine, we realized the tailing pond isn't how they showed it on TV.
Huge earthen dams up to 50 stories tall, holding back billions of tons of mining waste.
Nearly enough to bury the city of Seattle, Washington. All the mine waste that would come out.
It's sand that's behind the tailings facility. It's not some massive toxic sludge. It's sand, all right? If the dam breaks, the sand doesn't go anywhere. I've never seen anybody do what EPA has done.
Why? Are you surprised? Government always grows.
No, not like this.
Well, these are not evil people who just want to hurt you. They must
No,
really
I believe
feel...
these are in fact zealots. Now, zealots don't necessarily have to be evil, but they decided to kill this project before any science had been done, and there are memos that show that.
There are incriminating memos. Nancy Stoner, an EPA regulator, coincidentally used to work for NRDC. She wrote her former colleagues.
Look, you can't directly ask me to meet with you, but if you ask somebody else and have a few other people there, then I can meet with you.
The EPA is supposed to be independent, but it often isn't.
They're very close, aren't they? The NRDC guys go to work for... They're sleeping with each other?
Figuratively. Nancy Stoner leaves NRDC, goes to EPA, and immediately is involved in the decision to kill this mine when that's one of the top priorities of NRDC.
Nancy Stoner did not respond to our questions. She's now left the government and works for another environmental group.
This mine would destroy 90 miles of streams.
Bob Dean speaks for the NRDC.
Your people are working for the EPA now. And EPA people come to work for the NRDC, colluding with big liberal regulators.
NRDC is a source of expertise, and sometimes the government takes advantage of that.
This is the beautiful bay they're worried about. I assumed the Pebble Mine was right next to this bay, but no, it turns out it's 90 miles away, the distance between Baltimore and Philadelphia.
It is frustrating for me that someone that does not live here come here and dictate and tell us what we cannot do, because we live here.
You're just wrecking poor people's lives. This would create jobs.
We created 50,000 new jobs in this country, putting up wind turbines, solar panels, building the next generation of energy-efficient cars. This is where the future is.
We also need copper and gold, and those are jobs too.
Well, that's right, and we have to weigh those risks.
There are some mines where NRDC says, great, go ahead.
Well, it's not up to us.
Are there any?
Yeah, it's not up to us to greenlight mines, but what we do is...
Are there any you don't complain about?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We asked him for some names. We're still waiting.
Listening to you, I'd think America would be uninhabitable, but nature's resilient. Mount Novarupta blew up near Bristol Bay in 1912. One of the worst volcanoes ever. The volcano couldn't destroy Bristol Bay. What makes you think one carefully regulated mining company will?
If volcanoes were corporations that operated for profit, we would like to ensure that volcanoes not blow up and do natural disasters.
It doesn't matter if you're going to build a bridge or a road or drill oil or timber, they're against everything.
Tim Laporte runs an air taxi company.
We get calls consistently for people looking for jobs. There just literally are no jobs in the area.
Matt Wren worked for Pebble as a maintenance technician.
Having Pebble here gave people a reason to stay sober, to get up and do their job every day, you know, to have responsibility and a sense of pride in the fact that they were bringing an income to their families.
Pebble is just one project environmentalists have stopped. Here's actress Daryl Hannah saying, "Stop to Keystone."
The pipeline decision could be postponed.
The lack of progress on the Keystone XL pipeline.
It was 7 years ago when a company first applied for permission to build the pipeline. First, activists in Canada chained themselves to equipment to stop people from getting to the oil.
This is a toxic industry, and the only future that it's going to lead us to is a toxic one.
When your bulldozers try to cross our line,
while in Nebraska,
every single person will be here saying, no, not in our land, not in our water.
Jane Cleve and her activists have so far stopped Keystone in her state.
How much have you slowed it down, personally?
I think we've slowed it down 6 years here.
And if President Obama tomorrow said, okay, go ahead, would it be built?
Not in Nebraska. TransCanada could not lay a single ounce of pipe for at least 3 years because of all the legal challenges that landowners have right now.
I've come to Cushing, an oil town.
Further south along the pipeline route, the president stopped in Cushing, Oklahoma. Although his administration had delayed the pipeline, here he said he'd speed the process.
Today I'm directing my administration to cut through the red tape, break through the bureaucratic hurdles, and make this project a priority. So go ahead and get it done.
He approved the pipeline, but only from Oklahoma to Texas.
It was very exciting.
Hotels popped up, restaurants were packed.
But then
President Obama has vetoed a bill from Congress to authorize construction of the Keystone XL pipeline.
This company had a contract to build Keystone's pipes. Now they sit in this warehouse. The owner calls it a steel wasteland.
You know, you can see the dust that's collected over the years. There's probably $3 to $4 million sitting here waiting to be put into the ground. We probably have another $1 million worth of equipment sitting outside, you know, just waiting.
They want as many pipelines as they can get to make as much
so
money
what?
as they
That's
want.
Build America. You've seen the chart with all the pipelines. This is what's powered our prosperity.
We have enough oil in the United States right now.
You're depriving people of actual shovel-ready jobs, thousands of them. And now you're saying stop?
We are, and you're right. About 2,000 construction jobs would be generated by building Keystone XL.
They want to bring in more life-saving oil.
No, they want to bring in more carbon pollution-producing oil rather than us as the United States say no. Actually, this time, no.
People used to say NIMBY. You can build, just not in my backyard. Now it's roughly banana. Build absolutely nothing, anywhere, near anybody.
With Keystone and projects like yours, I would think people who would want to build something would say, don't come to America.
They're saying it already. This is green tyranny.
And the tyrants get their way. Keystone and the Pebble Mine are stopped.
You shouldn't be for resources, you shouldn't be for development, you shouldn't be for anything to better your life or have a good life. You should just shut up and go back to living the way we think you should. God gave us the minerals. He didn't just put it there for no reason. This is our home. We don't want anything to happen to it.
Coming up.
Lots of people pay to come here and see that. Some people call it a crime against nature. What's the truth? You've heard the news. 97% of scientists agree.
Climate change is getting worse.
Carbon could cost us the planet. Just look out the window.
Look out the window? Because it's a hot day and her tiny piece of the world? How shallow is that? And what does it mean when we hear...
The debate is settled.
97%.
97%. 97% of scientists agree.
Of course I believe in global warming.
Pat Michaels is called a climate change denier, but he agrees that the globe is warmed.
97% of scientists agree that global warming is real and people have something to do with it.
Climate changes.
Climate changes.
Temperature's up 4 degrees since what's called the Little Ice Age hundreds of years ago, and up 2 degrees over the past century.
The real question is it dangerous? Is it going to harm people?
Exactly.
There's not a 97% consensus on that?
Of course there's not.
There's no consensus on fear-mongering like this.
If we lose the ice caps, you know how high the water will be? It would come up to the Statue of Liberty's elbow.
But even the UN's computer models don't predict the 20 feet that Neil deGrasse Tyson and Al Gore predict. We invited them and 20 other alarmists to make their points on this program. Only one, Bill Mumo, agreed. He worries about
the hot car effect, where you put your car in the sun, it's 70 degrees outside, you get in your car, it's 140, how did it happen? That's exactly what's happening with the atmosphere.
The climate models that got the government so excited have been totally wrong so far.
Well, I would say the climate models are actually better than economic models.
Well, they're both bad.
Okay, I wouldn't object to that conclusion.
But then why should we turn our lives upside down based on bad models?
Because last time carbon dioxide was this high in the past, sea levels were maybe 20 feet higher than they are now.
That was back before humans existed.
It will resume warming, but you don't really care whether it warms a degree in the next 60 years. It warmed a degree in the last 100 years. Life expectancy doubled.
A few degrees warming might be good.
It might be if you, depending where you are.
Cold waves kill many more people than heat waves.
Well, I don't know. How many tens of thousands of people died in Europe in 2003 in the heat wave?
Tens of thousands did die. Heat can kill. But many more people die from cold. The CDC says heat kills 600 Americans a year. Cold kills more than twice that many.
This budget requests $1.1 billion to address climate change.
The agency doesn't get money going in front of a congressional committee and say, you know, my issue, it's really not a problem. You ought to give the money to somebody else. No, instead, issues compete with each other for your money. And so You have to scare them.
We have to act in this decade.
As someone who gets paid to do research, I'm really excited. I'm going to go home and have fun. And so, to summarize, we have much scientific confidence that warming is contributing to sea level rise and other changes.
I've lived through 8 environmental apocalypses: the population bomb, acid rain, the ozone hole, global cooling, you name it. The global warming scare has longer legs because it's got more money.
That also gives climate alarmists a reason to squash dissent.
The climate change deniers suggest there's still a debate over the science. There is not.
I bought what they were saying.
Judith Curry is a climate scientist at Georgia Tech. She once agreed with the scaremongers.
What changed?
Well, ClimateGate.
Emails reveal a plot among the world's top climate scientists.
A group of esteemed scientists were strategizing to squash their opponents. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. Why should I believe this instead of my own judgment? What scientists actually agree on is a very narrow slice of things. Yes, temperatures have been increasing overall for the last several hundred years.
No doubt.
And that carbon dioxide does act to warm the planet. But there's no agreement as to whether warming is dangerous or not.
For saying that,
you were one of the targets of the congressman saying, show us where you get your money.
Yeah. I was one of the 7.
7 climate skeptics were branded heretics in order to reveal all their sources of funds. Curry abandoned science.
This is after praising me and pushing me a few years ago as, you know, the prestigious
well,
scientist.
You have wrong
whatever.
opinions now.
Yeah. I was trying to be honest as a scientist. It was very unpopular with a lot of my colleagues. They were trying to squash people who disagreed with them.
And they've succeeded.
I get emails from people all the time who wish they could speak out.
What are they worried about?
Losing their jobs.
It's dangerous to dissent when climate change is something politicians address with religious zeal.
This was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal.
Admit it. It's a religion. The head of the United Nations climate panel said it's his religion.
When you emit greenhouse gases, you feel like you're committing a sin?
I suppose if I were a preacher, I'd say we're all sinners, but there's redemption out in the future.
What is redemption?
My wife and I decided to build a zero net energy house in New England. It's completely solar.
But it's expensive.
Basically, it's tax-free money for me.
Yeah, taxpayers subsidize you and me. I did it too. Hey,
yep.
What's fair about that? That just hurts the poor. They ask all these Nobel Prize winners, what do we need to do to help the world?
Yeah.
Addressing climate change was way down on the list. 1 million people die from dysentery.
Yes, absolutely.
Dirty water, horrible things that are killing people now.
Yep. And that would be cheap to fix, by the way. Cheaper than
we should do that before we worry about global warming.
But it's not an either-or thing.
But government action is an either-or thing. We don't have endless money. If we want to help people, we ought to do what really helps. You've been told fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, they're evil.
At this demonstration, one man had the nerve to hold a sign saying, I love fossil fuels. Protesters ripped it out of his hand.
Hey, excuse me, this is private property.
Later, he tries to convince them that fossil fuels are good.
These fuels are far cheaper, more plentiful, more reliable.
Most protesters don't want to hear it. They know fossil fuels are bad.
Fossil fuels help in the short term. That's real. I mean, I turn on the lights every morning.
But
that's
I guess
real. But in the long run, that's not going to help. We're not anti-electricity, we're anti-fossil fuels.
Green tyrants tell them to be.
I've made an unrefuted case that it's going to destroy us if we keep doing what we're doing.
This activist is Bill McKibben.
The oceans will rise, that the forests will burn.
McKibben speaks at campus after campus. But this speech was a little different because there was one opposing viewpoint.
Fossil fuels are absolutely essential.
That's Alex Epstein, that counter-protester you saw before.
This guy had said that the fossil fuel industry, which is the industry that makes all of our lives possible, is public enemy number one.
Epstein says it's moral to use fossil fuels. He wanted to debate McKibben, but green tyrants don't like to debate. So Epstein offered McKibben money.
I'll pay him 10 grand. I'll get him a venue at Duke University. And he said yes.
That's how that rare debate happened. I'm glad students heard points like this.
This is a piece of coal. Basically, all fossil fuel energy is it's taking this rock and figuring out how to use it to charge your iPhone or to power your car. I think that's amazing.
It is amazing, but it pollutes.
Energy is a climate protection device, and we need as much of it as we can get.
There we go. This is what we do on live television, folks, in the blizzard.
Nature doesn't give us a safe climate that we're making dangerous. It gives us an incredibly dangerous climate that we're making safe.
Certainly safer. Even as the globe has warmed, climate-related deaths have dropped by a lot. Since 1933, by 98%.
We desperately need the rain.
Drought used to be the biggest climate-related killer, but those deaths are way down because fossil fuels allowed trucks to bring food to people who once starved, and because farmers fight drought with fossil fuel-powered irrigation pumps. Still, global warming may become a big problem.
All the worst predictions, if they never materialize, what will be the harm that is done from having made the decision to respond to it?
What's the harm?
Kerry was giving that speech in Indonesia. If they hadn't been able to use coal, which is what Kerry thinks they shouldn't be able to use, they would still be desperately poor.
But the protesters don't think about that. And the green tyrants have convinced them other fuels are just as good.
Renewables really work.
100% renewable for Americans means Americans get to control and own their own energy.
Politicians give your money to people who sell wind power and solar power.
We've got to keep developing new sources of energy.
Europe tried that first, but then noticed the wind doesn't always blow, and clouds sometimes block the sun. Electricity prices shot way up. So now in Europe,
many governments are reinvesting in fossil fuels.
They're actually building more coal capacity than ever to compensate for the renewables that they can't rely upon. Sometimes there's too much, sometimes there's too little. You want forms of energy that you can control, not that control you.
But activists point out renewables are improving. Today, they provide 13% of America's electricity. However,
when people say renewable, they usually think solar and wind, but those contribute a very minuscule percentage. It's mostly hydro, which is a great source of energy that the environmentalists mostly oppose.
It kills fish.
Yeah, and the Sierra Club's list of its most proud accomplishments, it lists all the dams it shuts down.
Don't the activists see the contradiction? No.
In the future, cars could be powered by hazelnuts. That's encouraging, considering an 8-ounce jar of hazelnuts costs about $9.
He made one of the best arguments ever against solar, wind, and biofuels. I just don't think he realizes it.
After all, Fallon belongs to a group that attacks fossil fuels. Next, what should be done about these whales imprisoned at SeaWorld? I'm told these whales are snatched from their mothers and cruelly treated just so people can make money. What's the truth?
Millions go to SeaWorld to get close to killer whales. But then 2 years ago, the documentary Blackfish appeared.
Exposing the darker side of the theme park.
The movie tells how baby whales are captured by greedy businessmen.
We are only after the little one.
They had bombs they were throwing in the water to herd the whales into coves. But the orcas had been caught before, and they knew their young ones would be taken from them.
Just like kidnapping a little kid away from her mother. You know, I can't think of anything worse than that.
CNN bought that documentary and ran it again and again.
All whales in captivity have a bad life. They're all psychologically traumatized.
The documentary stirred protests. These people say, free the whales, close SeaWorld.
I don't want an industry that abuses them to get a dime of any family's money.
SeaWorld is synonymous with cruelty to animals.
Blackfish does make the owners of marine parks look like animal abusers. That's hurt SeaWorld, something CNN points out repeatedly.
Attendance is down by 1 million, and its stock price has dropped 40%.
SeaWorld wouldn't talk to the Blackfish producers, but they did talk to us.
SeaWorld separates whales from their mothers.
We haven't done that in 35 years. We have no plans to do it again, and the film implies that we're doing it yesterday.
Kelly Flaherty Clark is SeaWorld's head trainer. She says Blackfish is completely deceitful.
The things that they described just didn't happen.
SeaWorld's head veterinarian says this is the life the whales know.
80% of the whales that we care for within our parks were born right here. The key difference between what our whales experience over their lives and what killer whales in the wild experience is the fact that there are people there. Our trainers are there working with them every day.
Blackfish claims the captive whale's droopy dorsal fins prove the whales are sad and unhealthy.
Dorsal collapse happens in less than 1% of wild killer whales. We know this.
I've never in my 28 years seen the shape of a dorsal fin affect a killer whale's health or well-being, and it certainly is no indication of mood.
When it gets warm and it's out of the water more, it starts to take on a new conformation.
Why doesn't that happen in the wild?
Our whales spend more time at the surface because that's where their trainers are.
While the director of Blackfish and others who appear in the film wouldn't talk to us, biologist Lori Marino did.
All whales in captivity have a bad life?
All of them have a bad life.
The wild isn't so perfect. There's competition for space, food, sex, life itself.
It's not all perfect, but these animals evolved over millions of years to be adapted to deal with the challenges of the wild, not with living in a concrete tank. They need space. They need a social life. They don't have to do shows and stupid pet tricks.
Are you whales being cruelly imprisoned here?
The movie Blackfish says whales kept in marine parks are miserable. But how would they know? As the movie points out, we can't ask the whales what they think.
Because we don't speak whale. We don't speak whale, we don't speak tiger, we don't speak monkey.
No, I don't speak whale, but I know the whales are doing well because I interact with them each and every day.
But how do you know? You can't. Maybe they're miserable.
They breed, they swim, they play. They anticipate seeing us, they enjoy interacting with us.
The vet points out, we know if our pet dog is happy.
While I may not know what my dog is thinking when I interact with him, I certainly know that he's happy and that we have a good relationship.
But SeaWorld's whales have done violent things.
An employee is dead after an incident.
This whale, Tillicum, grabbed trainer Dawn Brancheau by her ponytail, pulled her under, and drowned her.
He never gave anybody indication that he would reach and pull something into the water.
He killed your friend.
Yes, he did. He did not do what he did because he was frustrated. He found himself with a person in his environment, and he was not conditioned the proper way to respond.
Another charge for the movie.
The lifespans are much shorter in SeaWorld than in the wild.
But marine specialists we contacted didn't corroborate that. And as SeaWorld points out,
we have a 50-year-old whale living at SeaWorld of San Diego right now. We have whales in their 40s. Our whales' life parameters are the same as whales in the wild.
To me, the most upsetting part of the movie is hearing a mother whale cry when her child is taken from her.
She stayed in the corner of the pool, like literally just shaking and screaming.
How can anyone look at that and think that that is morally acceptable?
But it turns out the film faked that. They added this sad cry.
Sound effects that aren't even appropriate to a killer whale.
And this footage isn't even of the right whale. This whale doesn't even live in the same city.
They just cheated.
Has absolutely made up something that would never happen. The level of accusation, the level of untruth that's being brought towards us.
Many animal rights protesters want whales freed, but that wouldn't work out so well.
It would be awful for Tilly if you were to free Tilly.
The greatest adventure of the summer.
Remember the movie Free Willy? It aroused so much sympathy that Willy was freed. Here a trainer helps free him from his sling. But once freed, wild whales wouldn't allow him in their pods. So Willy kept returning to shore to seek contact with people. Not long after he was freed, he died. Still, even if Blackfish is deceitful, it does raise a good question. Is it right to keep animals like these in what are basically cages?
What this?
Is it okay to imprison animals, wild animals, and gape at them and charge people admission to gape at them?
I don't want to pay to see animals in cages.
Many people protesting SeaWorld say there should be no zoos.
It's very hard to justify them anymore.
What if we got rid of zoos?
We are affecting kids. And as I was affected in my first experience at a zoo, when a giraffe bent down and I was forever changed as a person, I'm going to work with animals. These kids coming to the stadium are having that experience.
SeaWorld uses money from their orca shows to fund animal conservation.
The only way we can preserve the animals in the wild is to better understand them. The only way to better understand them, the only way to fall in love with them is at a place like SeaWorld, where you can see them eye to eye.
We've had quite an effect on the wild places in this world. The impact that we have on the people that come here is worth billions, because they're going to go out and be different people. They're going to care.
Next, the propaganda the green tyrants make our children watch.
There may be no alternative but to cancel Christmas.
If you go to the movies these days, you'll hear lots of scary things.
We've never been hit by a storm quite like this. Global warming is the reason for this unprecedented event.
Environmentalism and Hollywood have gone hand in hand.
Mark Morano, a journalist who tries to fight the fear-mongering, calls this propaganda from people who want government to control life.
Mr. Vice President, if we don't act now, it's going to be too late.
What you call propaganda, they say we're just informing people.
They're not informing people. They're using science and environmental scares to achieve these political ends that they've been trying to do essentially since the 1960s.
I think we're on the verge of a major climate shift.
Those are the exact words we heard in the 1970s about the global cooling scare. They actually said climatologists are pessimistic that politicians won't act in time in order to prevent the coming climate catastrophe.
At the UN, a movie actor lectures the delegates.
Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying.
Leonardo DiCaprio is probably the chief celebrity spokesman. He actually famously said one time, "I'll fly all over the world in order to fight global warming." But he didn't quite get the disconnect.
Yeah, come on. What you got?
The most successful movie ever is this one.
That's right.
Avatar's villain is a mining company.
This little gray rock sells for $20 million a kilo.
To get it, the miners will destroy the indigenous people's land.
Those savages are threatening our whole operation.
The film's director is James Cameron.
He went down with Sigourney Weaver to Brazil to protest hydroelectric dams, which would have brought running water and electricity to hundreds of thousands of people, and then flew back home to Hollywood, where he had mansions, he had private planes. He's living a high-carbon lifestyle, yet he is willing to deny that progress to the poor people.
Flying around the world, criticizing greenhouse gases. We asked DiCaprio and Cameron's representatives about their hypocrisy, but they didn't respond.
Break the rules.
Hollywood tells kids to fight environmental destruction, get in the way.
There's nothing to stop them from bulldozing from one coast to another. Except for us. You gotta start thinking like an outlaw.
You might call this
soft-core eco-terrorism porn for children. This was a movie that showed kids going in and ravaging construction sites, all to save endangered species.
We gotta stop this construction once and for all. We're the only ones who care. We're the only ones who know.
At least this is Hollywood. At least we can look at that and say, that's fiction, that's supposed to be fiction.
This isn't supposed to be.
The New York Times climate reporting reads like a Greenpeace newsletter.
The so-called paper of record says climate signals are growing louder and we're running out of time and the worst is yet to come.
A crippling, potentially historic blizzard.
On TV, storms are not just bad, they're historic.
Historic, crippling, and catastrophic. Historic snow. Historic. Historic. Historic.
Historic snow day.
And climate change causes so many problems.
CNN actually asked, was this asteroid caused by global warming?
What's coming our way? Is this an effect of perhaps global warming?
There's a blurring between fiction and reality because they have a political agenda.
Sea level worldwide would go up 20 feet. This is what would happen in Florida.
Climate scientists laugh at those claims, but kids don't know that. And today in school,
they watch this over and over. We've had children who had to sit through Al Gore's film 4 times in 4 different classes.
Global warming or None like it hot.
The kids also watch The Story of Stuff. It explains how a radio is made.
The metal was probably mined in South Africa. The petroleum was probably drilled in Iraq.
Story of Stuff has been viewed 40 million times. It says if you buy a radio,
These people paid with the loss of their clean air, with increasing asthma and cancer rates. Kids in the Congo paid with their future.
This is basically telling kids, everything you buy, we're exploiting other people.
I'm sorry, I bought a radio.
Instead of marveling at the technology behind it, they're calling progress for these countries exploitation.
This film was shown at the UN. The little girl watches the news and learns that because of man, her world will fall apart.
Kids are scared.
They're very scared. They have pictures of Santa Claus's home melting, and they do this every Christmas.
There may be no alternative but to cancel Christmas.
And no one better tell kids, don't be scared.
No dissent allowed when you're teaching your children about global warming. They're going to be told that there is one view, and the view is that we face a climate danger and that we must act.
And so lots of people are eager to act, to save the planet, like this woman.
I don't produce any trash, and I haven't for the past 2+ years.
Really? No trash? What's the point? That's next. I recycle. It makes me feel good. But what I do is nothing compared to what Lauren Singer does.
I don't produce any trash, and I haven't for the past 2+ years.
No trash in 2 years? Well, a little.
So all of the trash that I have produced can fit inside of a mason jar.
This, she says, is it. Everything else she reused, recycled, or composted.
Where do you compost?
I keep my compost in my freezer, so I'll show you if you want.
The freezer?
If you keep it in here, it's like any frozen food. It won't break down.
It's supposed to break down. It's compost.
Well, every Saturday I bring this to the farmer's market where they do a citywide composting program.
On her way home, she buys coffee.
I was wondering if I could get a latte, but do you mind making it in here for me?
To avoid using plastic cups, she brings a mason jar everywhere.
Thank you so much.
To avoid what she calls industrial chemicals, she makes her own cosmetics.
This is my lotion that I make myself. It's a whipped body butter. And if you smell it, it smells kind of chocolatey.
Yeah. You put that on your face?
It smells chocolatey.
Why does she live this way?
Everything started for me when I was an environmental studies student at NYU.
Oh yes, on every campus, sustainability is big.
Penn's integrating sustainability across the curriculum.
MSU provided over 90 sustainability-related courses.
After Lauren graduated, she put this video up on Kickstarter.
I was an environmental science major in college, and I not only wanted to learn about sustainability, but I wanted to actually live it.
People donated $41,000, which she used to start her sustainable products business.
What does sustainability mean?
Economist Holly Fretwell is annoyed by claims made by the sustainability crowd.
You get this moral high ground feeling. They're better than somebody else because they're protecting the environment more.
I'm sustaining the earth. I'm using less of it. I'm leaving it for my grandchildren.
All recycling isn't necessarily good and isn't necessarily environmentally benign.
Why not? Why wouldn't recycling be good?
Well, I live in Bozeman, Montana, and in order to recycle glass bottles, we ship them down to Golden, Colorado. That's a long way. We're using more energy than sometimes it would take to just start from scratch.
After Los Angeles mandated recycling, they discovered they needed another 400 garbage trucks to pick up the new containers.
Now we have twice as many garbage trucks that are driving around picking up garbage, creating their own pollutants.
Some recycling makes sense. Reusing aluminum saves lots of energy.
But just about everything else is a scam.
When we talk about recycling glass, we're actually talking about replacing sand, right? One of the most abundant materials on Earth.
Glass is made of sand. There's infinite sand around. Who cares if we recycle glass? This isn't going to make any difference.
The average American, they produce 4.4 pounds of trash per day.
So what if we produce 4 pounds?
It's hurting the environment because we have to create more and more landfills, and landfills aren't free.
Lots of people believe America will soon run out of landfill space, but it's not true.
We're not running out of landfill space. We have more landfill space than we historically have ever had.
How can there be more space?
We've created these big landfills that are really safe and have liners within them so that they don't permeate into the ground and destroy the water tables. And once we fill that up, we seal it off and we put a park on top.
A park, or this ski resort, or this beach near Boston, all built on landfills.
All of America's garbage for the next 100 years would fit on Ted Turner's Flying D Ranch in Montana with 50,000 acres to spare.
You could put all the world's trash for the next 1,000 years into one 15-mile square landfill. There's lots of room out there.
That doesn't make it okay.
Why not? It just sits in there. You build ski mountains over it.
I prefer to do things in a way that are in homeostasis with the way that the earth is.
It sure is nice to live in a country where young people can afford to pay more for organic food and have so much free time that they wash everything by hand and feel empowered by living what they call a sustainable life.
I had no idea that it was even possible to live without producing trash. And when I learned that, it was like this, wow, I'm so empowered.
Wow, that's our show. Let's not let the green tyrants run our lives. Thanks for watching.